Hello, and welcome to Life Diaries, a space where the pages of life open up, one story at a time. These are tales written by experience, spoken from the heart. Take a moment for yourself, and let's begin. Alice closed the last file, rubbing her eyes tiredly. Her gaze fell on the clock. Wow, 10 already, she exclaimed in surprise. The phone in her hand immediately showed 3 missed calls from Paul. Tapping a pen nervously on the desk, she dialed his number. The rings stretched on, and Alice was about to hang up when his displeased voice came through the receiver. "Yes, darling?" she said, hearing how guilty and ingratiating her tone sounded. "I'm sorry." Paul was silent, just sighed, but didn't hang up. That was a good sign. She continued, trying to speak more gently. "I know I promised to come home early today, but the project—" Paul interrupted sharply. "The project, of course, Alice. I understand. Work is the most important thing. Only, you're marrying me, not a project." "Paul, we're getting married in a month." "I know," Alice replied. "Okay, I'll wait for you at home." "I'll be there soon, love." Hanging up the phone, Alice slowly exhaled. How could she have forgotten her promise to finish early? However, it wasn't surprising. Work had been her only passion for many years. That was how it was until Paul appeared in her life 2 years ago. She smiled, looking at the elegant gold ring with a large diamond. She remembered how nervous he was, getting down on one knee, how the violinist played, how people applauded around them. Through tears of joy, she had said, "Yes, then." Only a year had passed, and their relationship had changed. Paul thought her work was to blame, but Alice had always worked a lot. True, a year ago she was promoted, and the workload increased. Now she had a project that the future of the firm depended on, and she couldn't let her colleagues down. When she returned home, he was already asleep. Alice gently stroked his head. He snuffled like a child without waking up. Sighing, she went to the bathroom. Tomorrow morning, he wouldn't talk to her again. A slender, dark-haired girl with a perfect black bob and huge black eyes looked back at her from the mirror. Should such a woman spend days on end in the office? Alice smiled at her reflection. It was decided. She would take a day off this week. She would get herself ready, choose a beautiful dress, do her hair and makeup. Then she would order dinner, wine, put on music, and wait for him to come home from work. Maybe then he would forgive her. Of course, she would have to promise to work less, and perhaps after the project was completed, she would actually do so. Hard work was instilled in Alice from early childhood. No one, seeing her now in a designer suit, driving a new foreign car, with a perfect manicure, would believe she grew up in a remote village. Bad roads, dilapidated houses, pigs and cows roaming everywhere. That's how she remembered her small homeland. She was raised by her grandmother, although her parents were alive. Her mother divorced her father when Alice was 4, and she barely remembered him. The first vivid memory was a long, bumpy ride on an old bus with her mother and many bags. The girl had a good time at her grandmother's in the village. Games all day, running around with the neighbors' children, grandma's pies. But her mother didn't like it there, and after a few months, she left for the city. She promised to get settled, find a place, and take Alice immediately. At first, her mother came often, then less and less. One day she arrived with Uncle Leo and announced her wedding. Alice didn't like him. He tried too hard to seem nice, smiling unnaturally. But her mother was happy with him. After the wedding, her mother and Uncle Leo were not in a hurry to take Alice. "Why doesn't Mom come for me?" the girl asked her grandmother. She just sighed. "Mom says their apartment is very small," Grandma explained, immediately adding, Are you unhappy with me? No, Grandma. So they lived together, just the two of them. Gradually, Alice got used to it. Grandma was kind, cheerful, and never despaired. Whatever happened, she would repeat, "The main thing is, we're alive and well. And as long as our hands and feet are whole, our head works. Everything can be fixed." The grandmother's name was Alice Konstantinovna, and her granddaughter was named in her honor. In the village, they were distinguished as Alice the Elder and Little Alice the Younger. However much Grandma tried to be strong, age took its toll, and Little Alice quickly realized that Grandma Alice needed help. Her mother initially sent a little money, but stopped after getting married. Grandma's pension was barely enough for two. The garden, chickens, and a goat saved them. But little Alice understood that this wasn't enough. It was she who needed to work to provide a decent life for herself and her grandmother. From childhood, she began looking for ways to earn extra money. Some women went to the city to sell produce, but Grandma didn't let little Alice go. "You're too young for the city and the market. How awful. Don't worry, little one. There'll be enough money," she said. Alice heard these words but saw how Grandma denied herself many things. Grandma hadn't bought new clothes in a long time, and her winter boots had been resoled by the neighbors several times already. "If you won't let me go to the city, I'll find a way to earn money here," the granddaughter declared stubbornly. She did everything she could, collected berries and mushrooms for resellers, searched for medicinal herbs according to Grandma's instructions. Every week she would leave early in the morning and return with a full bag. She also learned that the shop accepted glass bottles. Many people in the village had accumulated them, but no one wanted to wash and return them. Little Alice wasn't lazy. She went around the houses, collected the bottles, and took them to Grandma's yard. This way, the villagers got rid of clutter, and little Alice earned some money. She also turned in scrap metal, which she collected with the boys. The leader, Freckled Andrew, explained the rules. "Everything you find is yours. But no one cares that you're a girl. Haul as much as you can." She couldn't carry as much as the boys, but she still earned a lot. The girl quickly realized that she should look for not the heaviest, but the most valuable, copper. She figured out which parts contained it. Climbing through the dump of abandoned cars, Alice found copper and sold it. With this money, she bought clothes, shoes, school supplies for herself, and took care of Grandma's wardrobe. "You're my little breadwinner," Grandma would say with tears of tenderness every time her granddaughter handed her money. "When I grow up, Grandma," little Alice would reply, "I'll take you to the city. I'll buy us a big, big house, and we'll live there. You won't have to work in the garden or keep goats anymore." Grandma Alice just laughed. "I live well here, my little one. But if you don't forget your old grandmother, I'll be very happy." At school, Alice was an excellent student, especially good at math, physics, social studies, and geography. She also did well in other subjects, but didn't see their practical use. After 11th grade, she enrolled in economics at the best city university. When her mother found out, she offered Alice to live with them. "I'll be fine in the dormitory," she replied. "And you're already cramped with the little one." Her mother and her husband had a son, Stevie, 2 years earlier. It seemed that after that, her mother completely forgot about Alice. Of course, Alice pretended not to be offended, but sometimes when Grandma was asleep, she would cry into her pillow. She wondered, what was it about her that made her mother love her less than her brother? At university, Alice also studied well, despite starting work from the first year and sending money to Grandma every month. "You'll see, Grandma," Alice would say. "I'll graduate from the institute and get a job at the coolest firm. Then I'll move you in with me, and we'll live well." Grandma just smiled in response. "The main thing is that everything is well with you, granddaughter." Alice passed all her exams with excellent marks, received a red diploma, and was planning to go to the village. But then her mother called. "Little Alice," she cried into the phone. "Your grandmother died." They all went to the village together. Mother, her husband, little Alice, and little Stevie. Alice was so shocked that the whole following week passed in a haze. Her mother and stepfather handled the funeral. Alice looked after her brother. She sat on the floor in the familiar grandmother's house, watched Stevie play with toys, and thought, what should she do now? She had promised Grandma she would take her to the city, buy a huge house. And now what? What was the point of trying anymore? "Little Alice, I need to talk to you," her mother said after the funeral. "Of course, Mom," Alice replied. "We found Grandma's will," her mother continued. "She wanted this house to be yours." Alice shrugged indifferently. "It doesn't matter to me," she replied. "I won't live here anyway. Everything here reminds me of Grandma and my childhood." "Do as you wish," her mother sighed. A week later, Alice gathered her courage and returned to the city. This was the life she had dreamed of since childhood. She got a job, and for all the subsequent years worked her way up. At 28, she became the youngest managing director in a large company. However, her personal life didn't work out. Or rather, Alice didn't let anyone get close. That was until she met Paul. Perhaps it was love at first sight, or maybe it was just time for strong feelings. A mutual attraction immediately arose between them. Paul was her complete opposite. Lighthearted, cheerful, carefree. He seemed to balance the serious Alice. He had his own fitness studio. He started as a trainer, then built a team and opened his own business. Alice immediately warned him about her busyness, to which Paul replied, "It's okay. I love my work too. And if I finish early, I'll make dinner and wait faithfully for my beautiful girl." At first, that's how it was, but lately, Paul had become increasingly annoyed by her work. They started arguing. That's when Alice decided to surprise him. She had to act so that he wouldn't suspect anything. After their argument, she tried to call and text more often. In one of these conversations, she asked, "What time are you finishing today?" "Why?" Paul asked cautiously. "Nothing," Alice immediately replied. "It's just that I'll be staying late again today. Sorry." It seemed to her that he sighed with relief. "Well, I'll be back late today too, so it's okay," Paul replied. Alice smiled. "Thank you for understanding everything." "Of course, darling." He hung up. "He's probably still upset." Alice sighed. "Never mind. I'll melt his heart today." Her new dress had just been delivered, thin, made of delicate red fabric, perfectly accentuating her figure. In this, he'll definitely forgive me, Alice thought with satisfaction, putting the dress back in the box. All the employees were surprised when she announced she would leave early. No one, of course, dared to ask their boss out loud. Alice arrived home, parked in her usual spot, and was surprised to notice her fiancé's car next to hers. Maybe he took a taxi today, she thought. Excited, she didn't wait for the elevator and ran up to the 5th floor. Opening the door, she froze on the threshold. Paul's carelessly discarded sneakers and some red women's sandals lay in the hallway. No, she thought. This only happens in bad comedies. Taking a deep breath and exhaling, she tried to compose herself. She calmly placed the box with the dress on the floor, took off her shoes, and slowly walked into the apartment. Almost immediately, her fiancé's voice was heard from the bedroom. Alice slowly entered the room. The first thing she saw was Paul's back. Then she noticed the girl. "So that's it," Alice said calmly. "So I wasn't imagining it when I heard the joy in your voice at the news that I would be coming home late today." Paul immediately turned around. There was such fright in his eyes that it almost made her laugh. The young blonde girl shrieked loudly and pulled the blanket over herself. "Alice," Paul said in astonishment. She expected any reaction, a clumsy excuse, a plea for forgiveness. But her fiancé managed to surprise her. He sighed somewhat sadly and said, "Well, maybe it's for the best." Then he turned to the girl huddled under the blanket. "Jane, wait for me in the car, please. I'll be down in half an hour." Alice watched with surprise as Jane fearfully got out, quickly dressed, and disappeared into the hallway. A second later, the front door slammed shut. "Okay," Alice said. "And what does all this mean?" Paul sat on the bed, rubbing his temples tiredly. "It means I'm tired and have been thinking for a long time that we should break up." Alice walked over and sat next to him. "But why?" she asked. "I thought we just had some minor problems." Her fiancé shook his head. "The problem is much deeper. We are too different. It's not even that you work a lot. It's that work is much more important to you than I am. And that's how it's always been." He looked at her. "And I can't live like that. I'm built differently. I'm not a go-getter. I like to work, but I'm not ready to live in my gym like you live in the office. I want to enjoy life, and you don't know how to do that." "Well, I guess you're right. It will be better for both of us." "I'm sorry," Paul said. He stood up, took out a suitcase, and started packing. Alice went to the kitchen. She sat there until she heard the front door slam shut. "Okay," Alice told herself. "At least I have my job. I'm about to finish the project. After that, I'll take a vacation and start a new life." But everything turned out completely differently than she had planned. A week later, arriving at work, she found a search in progress. "Alice," a strange man in a black suit addressed her. "Yes?" she replied in surprise. "What's happening?" He ignored her question. "Come with me to your office. I need to take your statement." It turned out that the firm's management was suspected of major fraud. Work was frozen, and the leading employees' accounts and property were seized. "Wait," Alice said. "Does that mean my property is also seized?" "Yes. Your car, apartment, and all bank accounts." "And for how long?" "Until the circumstances are clarified," he replied coldly. "But I had no idea. What should I do?" "Stay with friends or relatives." Alice signed the papers and went home. She was allowed to take what was necessary before being evicted indefinitely. On the way, she called a lawyer, but he couldn't say anything encouraging. "The charges are serious," he said, "and investigations into such cases take a long time. Months, even years. And will all my property be under arrest all this time?" He sighed. "I'm afraid so, Alice." The only place she could go was her old grandmother's house in the village. After her grandmother's death, Alice had never been there. At first glance, the house hadn't changed. It had just become more dilapidated. Alice took out the old rusted lock. "Hello, Grandma," she said softly. In childhood, the house seemed bigger. Now everything looked small and old, but more familiar. Alice walked through the room and sat on the bed where she used to sleep. "What should I do now, Grandma?" she asked the empty room. "I thought I had everything in my life. It turns out you can lose everything in an instant. A fiancé, love, career, money, apartment. And what's left? Your little house that I forgot about." And then, for the first time in many years, she wept bitterly and heavily. Alice woke up in the morning, not noticing when she had fallen asleep. She had forgotten to draw the curtains, and the bright sunlight woke her. "Well," she sighed, "for so many years I woke up to an alarm clock, and yesterday I even forgot to set it." Although, what do I need it for now? There's no work. At that moment, her stomach rumbled, and Alice remembered that she hadn't eaten anything since yesterday's lunch. There was nothing edible in Grandma's house, of course. She had to go to the shop. It was still very early, and Alice decided to spend this time cleaning. As she tidied up, sweeping away years of dust, she was unconsciously distracted from her sad thoughts. Perhaps, if this drags on, I'll have to find a job here, Alice reasoned. Maybe I'll even start a farm. Chickens, geese, maybe even a cow. After cleaning, she felt even hungrier, and Alice, relieved to see that the time was right, headed to the shop. Walking through the village, she noted with surprise that it was better here than in her childhood. Many new houses had appeared. Old ones had been renovated and repainted. The shop, standing in the same place, gleamed with a new sign. The sign is painted, not printed, Alice thought. A talented artist. I wonder if it's someone local. She went inside and was surprised by the cleanliness, coziness, and assortment. The shopkeeper, a young, attractive girl, smiled kindly. Good morning. You're our first customer today. Alice smiled back. Good morning to you too. Nice to hear that. Have you come here for the summer? The girl asked. I don't know yet. How did you guess so quickly that I'm not local? There aren't many residents here. I know everyone by sight. Alice laughed. Right, I didn't think of that. I lived here until I was 17, then I moved to the city. She looked thoughtfully at the shopkeeper. It's strange, you're younger, but not by much. I should remember you. The girl smiled. No, I only came here a year ago with my older brother. Oh, really? Alice said in surprise. To live? Yeah. I didn't think anyone would voluntarily want to move to such a remote place. Amy was a little offended. That's not fair, she said. It's very nice here, not far from the city. Beautiful nature, clean air. Actually, my brother wanted to. He's an artist. Oh, really? Alice exclaimed. So he painted the sign? Yes, it's very beautiful. Thank you, I'll tell him. But I've been talking your ear off. You came to shop. It was very interesting. By the way, my name is Alice. Nice to meet you. Amy? The shopkeeper extended a small, strong hand, which Alice shook. After that, Alice dictated her shopping list. Amy quickly brought what was needed and advised on what was best to take. In the end, both girls were pleased with each other. Where do you live? Amy asked. The second-to-last house at the edge of the village, by the lake, Alice said. That's great! Amy exclaimed happily. My brother and I live in the last house. I'll definitely introduce you. Okay, Alice replied. I'd be happy to. The weather was beautiful, and Alice decided to eat outside. She didn't feel like cooking, so she made sandwiches with cheese and sausage on fresh bread, brewed tea, and went out onto the porch. The sun was shining, birds were singing, and Alice sat, ate, and enjoyed the summer day. She thought with surprise that she couldn't remember the last time she had just sat like this, without work, without plans, without thoughts of business. Suddenly, a meow sounded near her feet. Alice turned her head and saw a fat striped cat. It had silently climbed onto the porch and was looking at her with interest, or rather, at the sandwiches. Judging by your appearance, you're not starving, Alice remarked. The cat looked attentively and repeated, meow, insistently. Okay, you little blackmailer here. She pulled out a piece of sausage and gave it to the cat. It sniffed, took it carefully, placed it on the porch, and began to eat. Enjoy your meal, Alice said and closed her eyes, basking in the sun. But after a few seconds, her peace was disturbed again. Sandro! A man's voice called from nearby. Sandro, where are you? Ran off to the neighbors again? Alice glanced at the cat, but it didn't react at all. "I think that's you," Alice remarked. "Sandro, are you here?" The gate swung open, and she saw a handsome blue-eyed man with curly blonde hair and a small light brown beard. He clearly didn't expect to see anyone here but the cat, and he looked embarrassed. "Excuse me, that's my cat. He keeps running off here. Sometimes I come to catch him." "Honestly, besides the cat, I haven't touched anything here." Alice smiled. "It's okay. You have a very sweet cat." She looked at Sandro, who, having finished the sausage, was calmly washing himself. "He's already begged food from you too," the cat's owner said regretfully. "It's impossible to refuse him," Alice replied. "And you must be the artist, Amy's brother?" "That's me," he said in surprise. "I don't think I've earned that title yet, at least if you mean it in a good way. But yes, I'm Amy's brother, Arthur." He extended his hand, as strong as his sister's, but larger. "Alice," the girl said, shaking his hand. "Nice to meet you." "If I had known someone lived here, I wouldn't have intruded so unceremoniously," he said. "I just arrived yesterday," Alice replied. "So you couldn't have known about me. And I met your sister a couple of hours ago." "Well, then it's clear. Are you staying long?" "I don't know myself yet, but most likely, yes." Arthur picked up the cat, who meowed discontentedly but didn't resist. "Come visit us any time," Arthur said. "I'm often home, unless I go somewhere, and my sister works until 6. "Okay," Alice replied. "I'll definitely drop by sometime. Just give me a couple of days to settle in and get things in order here." "Of course," Arthur replied. "If you need help, just ask. The doors of our house are always open, literally." The neighbor and the cat left, and Alice reached for her phone. She was waiting for a call from the lawyer with good news, or from Paul. Thinking of him, Alice immediately cursed. "Business. I'll go do something useful." Alice spent the rest of the evening tidying the house. She washed the windows, swept away cobwebs, vacuumed the furniture and the huge, heavy rug. As long as she could remember, it had always been there. Grandma, it seemed, never took it outside, cleaning it right in the room. Perhaps it was made of very high-quality material, because after so many years it remained dense, only the colors had faded. Alice wanted to take it out, but grabbing a corner, she realized how heavy it was. Let it stay, she decided. Grandma didn't move it for a reason. The first couple of days were spent cleaning, leaving no time for other thoughts. But now that the house was in order, visiting the neighbors seemed like a good idea. Amy is a very sweet, lively girl, Alice thought. We'll find a common language. She clearly has a business streak. And her brother is probably just a sweet eccentric. Well, you can sometimes talk to people like that too. Out of curiosity, she decisively stood up, left the house, hung the old lock, and headed towards the neighbors. She immediately noticed how different their house was. Alice didn't remember who lived there in her childhood, but it was certainly a simple village house. Now it was renovated, plastered, and painted a delicate salmon color. Beautiful, Alice thought, and very unusual. She walked up to the gate and pushed it. It wasn't locked. An old SUV stood in the yard, probably the one Amy used to go to the city for goods. And there were wildflowers growing in the yard, which were usually considered weeds and pulled out. "Arthur!" Alice called. "Amy!" "Meow!" came the reply. Sandro was sitting on the porch, squinting in the sun. "Hello, friend," Alice greeted him. "Where's your master?" "I'm here." A voice sounded unexpectedly close, making her jump. Alice hadn't noticed that she was standing by an open window, from which Arthur had replied. "Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you." "It's okay," I just got bored at home, so I remembered your invitation. Arthur smiled. I'm very glad. My sister was upset you hadn't come over. She wanted to stop by your place this evening. He squinted slyly. If you're not too busy right now, we can go for a walk. I was just looking for a new spot for a painting. Alice shrugged. She didn't like pointless walks, but there was nothing else to do. Okay, she replied. Then I'm coming. Arthur came out of the house, and a few minutes later appeared with a huge backpack on his shoulders. I'm ready, he replied. Let's go. Should I close the door? Alice reminded him. And the windows? What if someone gets in? He shrugged. Everyone here seems pretty nice, but if someone decides to, well, that's on their conscience. What a philosophy, Alice thought, but remained silent. They went out the gate, and Arthur confidently led her along the path. At first, Alice thought they would go to the small lake at the end of the village, where she used to swim as a child. But they walked along the shore without stopping. Tell me about yourself, Arthur suddenly asked. You're so mysterious. Alice smiled. I don't know why you decided that. This house was empty, I needed a place to live, and I moved in. That's all. Well, it's your business. I won't pry. It's just that you're clearly not the kind of person who would come here of their own free will. Well, then I can say that you and your sister are no less mysterious figures. He laughed. That's true. What do you think? Maybe we'll stop here. It's a nice spot. While talking, Alice hadn't noticed them reaching a small hill overlooking the lake. Beautiful, Alice admitted. I lived here for so many years, but I've never seen it from this angle. Arthur gave her a blanket, which she spread on the grass and sat down. The artist himself took out an easel, canvas, paints, and brushes from his backpack. The day was warm, not yet hot, and she enjoyed the unexpected outing. If I talk to you, will it bother you much? She asked. Arthur shook his head. Not at all. My hands are painting, and my head can do whatever it wants. And talking to such a smart, interesting girl will be doubly pleasant. Alice smiled. Okay. Will you be offended if I ask something personal? He shrugged. I don't think I'm easily offended. You can try. Your work? It's not very profitable, is it? Especially in a village. True, but it's enough for me to live on. And most importantly, I'm doing what I love. Just like your sister. She has a great shop, Alice remarked. It seems she knows how to run a business. Arthur smiled. I knew from the first glance that you and Amy are very similar. Alice decided to be honest. Yes, I appreciate it when people have a passion they are willing to devote themselves to completely and achieve maximum results. In monetary terms? Arthur clarified with a smile. And are you against money? No. It's just that different people need different amounts of it, and many don't know how to earn it and comfort themselves by saying money isn't the main thing. She stopped herself, thinking that Arthur probably thought exactly that. But the artist wasn't offended, he just smiled. Well, I really do think so, he said. Of course, I'm not an ascetic. I don't want to live in a hut and eat roots. But the life I'm living now suits me perfectly, and I feel happy. Well, I'm happy for you, Alice replied. But I'm not happy with my life. Right now. I lived in a huge apartment, drove a luxurious car, had 100 people reporting to me. And I was absolutely happy. And now I've lost all of that, and I don't know when I'll be able to get it back. And I'm completely unhappy with that. The artist turned and looked at her. Strange, he said. When I first saw you, feeding the cat sausage, you looked completely happy. It was just a moment. But life is made up of moments. Alice couldn't think of an answer to that. She just looked at the lake and remembered how she used to swim there with the kids in childhood, not getting out of the water until her lips turned blue. Then she would run home to Grandma, who would rub her with a towel and take her to the bathhouse. It was so hot there that the warmth penetrated to her bones. And how good it was after the bathhouse to sit at the table, wrapped in a towel, and watch Grandma bustling around, pouring tea with milk, pushing pies towards her. But then, in the city, she remembered her apartment, huge, expensive, in the center, in a super modern complex. The best designer had done the renovation. But Alice was almost never in that apartment because she was at work all the time. Yes, her expensive car. She drove it to work for 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening because there was no traffic. And work? Did work really make her happy? Or was it just the only place where she felt important and needed? Where she was valued, praised, told she was the best? And to not lose that, Alice was ready to spend her whole life there. I don't even have any friends, she suddenly thought with sadness. She had friends in college. She kept in touch for the first 6 months after graduation. Then she kept refusing to meet because of work, and they stopped inviting her. Make friends at work? Everyone there was either a subordinate or a competitor. It was even strange that she managed to start dating Paul. Lost in such thoughts, Alice didn't notice how much time had passed. She came to herself when Arthur spoke again. I think that's enough for today. Can I see? Alice asked. Of course. He stepped back, and she saw the painting. She was very surprised. Alice expected a landscape, but she saw herself. The lake and forest were far away and blurred in the background. She herself occupied most of the painting. Her face was barely visible, but the pose, her head resting on crossed arms. The inner state. Yes, you can really see the despair I'm in here, Alice thought sadly. How did he manage to capture that? You didn't like it? Arthur asked anxiously. Alice forced herself to smile. It's unexpected, she said honestly. I didn't even notice you were painting me the whole time. Arthur smiled. Honestly, I didn't plan to, but I looked at you and realized I wouldn't rest until I captured this state of yours today. Alice chuckled awkwardly. You definitely have talent. Thank you. Sorry if I embarrassed you. It's hard to embarrass me. He smiled. My sister should be back soon. I suggest we go back and make dinner. Haven't you gotten tired of me today? On the contrary, it's interesting. In the time Amy and I have lived here, I've gotten to know all the residents, and I wanted something new. And then there's you. Oh, really? So I'm just another new subject for you? He laughed. Not just that. I was curious before to imagine what you're really like, but I didn't expect to see you in person. Seeing Alice's puzzled look, the artist explained. Your neighbor, old John, told me a lot about you. Alice chuckled. Oh, really? And what did he say? That people like you are born very rarely. That you were special from childhood, bright like the sun, and strong like the wind. That you never doubted yourself, and there was no task you couldn't handle. Well, that's not quite true now, Alice remarked. Not at all. That's exactly how you look. She smiled sadly. Look at your painting. Clearly not. Arthur sighed. I understand that something serious has happened to you, but I think it's no accident that you came back here. Alice laughed. So you're not just selfless, romantic, and an altruist, but also a mystic. Arthur laughed. Too much for you? Yes, but you're right. Here I feel like I'm regaining my strength, and I'm very happy about that. The cat was waiting for them on the porch. Sandro, Alice suddenly said. Is that after Sandro Botticelli? Yes, Arthur replied. It's cliché. Well, The cat meowed expressively, and its owner frowned. I was hoping life in nature would teach him to forage for himself. He does forage, Alice said, defending the cat. In his own way. It was cool inside Arthur's house. All the walls, as she expected, were covered with paintings. You really are very talented, Alice said, looking at them. Thank you. Will you help me with dinner? Of course. By the time Amy returned from work, everything was ready. Wow, she said, seeing Alice. I was just planning to stop by your place this evening. They hugged. Although Alice was seeing this girl for the second time, she felt an inexplicable liking for her. And I've been bothering your, as it turns out, very talented brother all day, Alice said. Amy laughed. Yes, he's almost a genius. Enough, Arthur grumbled. Let's eat. During dinner, Alice ventured to talk about Arthur's paintings again. What I saw today is simply amazing. She addressed Amy, hoping for her support. And it's a crime that Arthur's paintings are just hanging in your village house, and no one sees them. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed that the artist frowned, but she continued. I can look among my acquaintances for someone who can help organize an exhibition. I'm sure Arthur is destined for great success and fame. To her surprise, Amy smiled and shook her head. Thank you for the offer, she replied, but we don't need that. What? Alice thought she hadn't heard correctly. Okay, Arthur, but you, Amy, the first time we met, I thought you were just like me. You have business acumen and... We don't need fame, attention, or success, Arthur suddenly interrupted her. We had our reasons for coming here. I don't want any big exhibitions. I just want to live here quietly and peacefully. Alice looked at the sister, and for a second, it seemed to her that tears glistened in Amy's eyes. What's going on? Alice wondered. I just wanted to help them. Okay, she said aloud. I've interfered in something that's not my business. I see you have personal reasons. She carefully got up from the table and stroked Sandro's back, who was settled on a nearby chair. And anyway, I've overstayed my welcome today. It was a good day. Nice to meet you. Goodbye. Neither the brother nor the sister said a word. Only when Alice walked out the gate, a breathless Amy caught up with her. Alice, wait! Alice turned around. From the girl's slightly reddened eyes, it was clear she was on the verge of tears. Forgive us, Amy said suddenly. Honestly, I really want to be friends with you. And my brother liked you, which is rare. He tries not to let people get close, and there are reasons for that. In short, we really want to be friends with you. And about the gallery, it was a wonderful offer if the circumstances were different. It's a shame I can't tell you everything. She suddenly grabbed Alice's fingers with her small, strong hands and squeezed them tightly. Just, please, believe me that there are reasons why we came here and are trying to live this quiet, peaceful life. And promise not to be offended by us. Okay, Alice replied. I won't. The days passed calmly. Alice called the lawyer, tried to contact the firm's management to find out about the case. There was no news. There's an investigation. When it will finish and what the results will be is unclear. All that was left was to wait, and that was the worst part. To keep herself busy, Alice started getting closer to her neighbors. She helped Amy in the shop. They went to the city together for goods several times. Then Alice helped unload, arrange, and handle documentation. This is completely below your level, she told her friend once. You could easily handle a whole chain of supermarkets. If you worked for me, you'd have been in charge of a huge department long ago. Amy just smiled. I'm happy here, she replied. Alice noted this strange phrase but decided that the time to learn the details hadn't come yet. In her free time, She came to Arthur's place. Several times he took her out into nature, and Alice was surprised every time. She had lived here for so many years, but Arthur, who had arrived recently, easily found places of such beauty that it took her breath away. "It's just every artist's ability," he replied modestly to her question. "Another one of your talents," she clarified. The artist just shook his head. "You are a very interesting girl," he remarked. "When you meet strangers, you pretend to be cold, act like you're not interested in people, but in reality, you're very attentive and see the good core in everyone, which perhaps the person themselves doesn't suspect." Alice was embarrassed. "You're praising me too much. You're underestimating yourself. I've never had problems with self-esteem. This is different." They were silent for a while. She watched Arthur diligently sketching the clouds, wondering how he kept up with their movement. Suddenly, a question came to Alice's mind. "Tell me," she asked, "how do you imagine your future in 10 or 20 years?" He sighed and looked somewhere into the distance. "That's too long a time to plan ahead," the artist finally replied. "For now, I can say that I really like it here, and I want to stay here forever." The last word sounded somewhat gloomy, and Alice wanted to put on something warm to chase away the goosebumps. She suddenly realized that with each passing day, she was growing fonder of both her childhood village and this brother and sister. And 2 weeks later, the lawyer called her. "Alice!" He was almost jumping in the receiver. That's the tone used to report either very good or very bad news. "The investigation is over. There are no violations," he shouted. "We'll be waiting for you at the office tomorrow. You can return to your apartment." Alice exhaled sharply and sat down on the floor. The news made her head spin. "You're not joking?" she asked just in case. The lawyer was taken aback. "God forbid. Of course not." "Sorry, it's just unexpected. Thank you for the news." She put the phone on the floor and tried to compose herself. Of course, this was wonderful news, and the joy should be immense. But for some reason, she immediately thought that this meant leaving the village and returning to the endless cycle of work, where there was no peace and quiet. "Meow!" Alice turned her head in surprise. It was hot, the door was open, only the old lace curtain was there. Taking advantage of this, the cat walked into the house and looked at her as if Alice owed him something. "You're impudent," Alice said. She got up and cut a thick slice of sausage. The cat didn't even glance at the treat and repeated insistently, "Meow." "Okay, Your Holiness Perfection. I don't have anything else. Either eat this or go home and bother your owner." "Meow." Alice sighed, scooped up the striped rascal, and went to the neighbors. "Arthur," she called through the open window. "I brought the cat." No one answered. "Arthur?" Silence. She could have left Sandro, but for some reason, Alice decided to go in. She saw Arthur immediately. He was lying on the floor unconscious. "Arthur!" She rushed to him and checked his pulse. Alive. She immediately dialed Amy, explained the situation. "I'll be there in a minute," she replied. Alice started thinking about what to do. His heart was beating. He was breathing. She gently patted his cheek. Arthur tried to open his eyes slightly. "Can you hear me?" Alice asked. "Hold on. I'll call an ambulance." "No need," he whispered. "My sister." "I'm here." Amy quickly slipped into the kitchen and returned with a glass of water and a pill. She helped her brother swallow it. Then the two of them moved him to the sofa. Satisfied that he was out of danger, Amy led Alice out onto the porch. "Do you know what's wrong with him?" Alice asked. Tears welled up in the girl's eyes. "I know," she replied briefly. "It's hereditary. My mother had the same thing." Alice was too flustered to find the words. No. Well, that is, it's a deep lesion of the nervous system. There's one injection. It's expensive. And it costs so much that no fund will help. Alice swallowed, immediately making a decision. Tell me how much. Amy named the sum. Alice just whistled. Exactly, Amy said with a bitter smile. And there's never enough money. That's why we moved here. Arthur wants to paint while he can, and live these years with me in peace. And then she cried. Alice silently hugged her. Her mind was occupied with something else at that moment. She spent the rest of the day on the phone. Even if she sold the apartment, the car, and took all the money from her accounts, there was still a large sum missing. Where could she get it? Alice asked aloud. Oh, Grandma, if only you were alive. However poor we were, you always came up with something. Always got money from somewhere. She suddenly remembered that when she asked where the money came from, Grandma Alice would say, "The house spirit gave it, but you can't just take it, only for a great need." Alice had trouble falling asleep. Before bed, she thought about her grandmother, so she was barely surprised when she opened her eyes and saw Grandma Alice by the bed. She was gently stroking her granddaughter's head. "Grandma!" Alice exclaimed in surprise. "Am I dreaming?" "Of course, my little one." "Did I do something wrong?" "You're doing everything right, my dear. There's just one thing I don't understand. You started living in my house, cleaned everything up. But why haven't you shaken out the rug properly?" Alice didn't know what to say to that. Grandma smiled again and disappeared. Alice woke up with a pounding heart. She grabbed the heavy rug and started rolling it up. "Nonsense," she muttered. "I've gone mad." But suddenly, on the floor, she saw an almost invisible square door. There was no handle. She had to work at it with a knife. But the door yielded and opened, revealing a passage to a small cellar the size of a cupboard. Alice shone a flashlight inside and discovered an old metal chest at the bottom. Disbelieving her eyes, she opened the lid and gasped. "How is he?" Alice asked Amy. She hadn't been able to make it to Arthur's discharge, having been held up in the city, but she rushed over as soon as she was free. "He's sleeping," Amy said. "Sorry, I would invite you in, but I'm afraid of waking him." "Then come over to my place," Alice suggested. The girl nodded. When they came to Alice's house and sat at the table, Amy said, "I haven't even properly thanked you for saving my brother." "Thank you. I'll never forget it. Consider yourself like a sister to me now. Perhaps this is the first truly good thing I've done in my life." "Don't say that. You're a very good person. I know you sold your apartment, car, and took all the money from your account. And also..." She looked at Alice sheepishly. Alice laughed. "Yes, I also found a treasure in Grandma's house. It sounds incredible." "Exactly. Do you think Grandma knew about it?" "Of course she must have known. And it seems she hinted at it in childhood, told fairy tales. But I either didn't understand or didn't want to believe. As I understand now, she herself didn't want to use it because she didn't think it belonged to her." "Oh, really?" "Yes. Grandma believed that this money could only be taken in a special case. And that's what happened." Amy smiled. "It's strange that I'm asking this," she said. "But do you regret that everything happened this way? I'm not talking about you saving my brother's life, meeting us, learning a secret. Because otherwise all your property, money, and even the treasure would have remained with you. And this way, you only have your job." Alice smiled. "I don't have a job either. I wrote my resignation letter today." Amy's eyes widened. "What? But what about everything you talked about? Your career, achievements, opportunities?" "No, I don't regret it. Yes, I would have a lot of money, but it wouldn't make me happier. And believe me, it's strange for me to say this, but I suddenly realized that I had strived for success and wealth my whole life. But having achieved all of that, I didn't become happier. To understand this, I needed to lose my money, even if temporarily. And it was easy for me to trade all of that for Arthur's life and health. Even if I know him only a little, I'm sure he is exactly the kind of person who truly understands what life is and knows how to appreciate it. Amy's eyes filled with tears. She quickly wiped them away and asked, "And what about you? Will you stay with us?" Alice smiled. "For now, yes. I don't even know what I'll do next. But I'm happy here for now, and I'm very glad we met." "And we are too," Amy replied. "Very much." They talked a little more, after which Amy went home to look after her brother. A few days later, Arthur was strong enough to visit his savior. "Shall we go for a walk?" he asked Alice when he came to visit. "Are you allowed?" she asked doubtfully. "If I stay lying down, I'll die. I feel very well." Without consulting each other, they walked along the same path that led past the lake to the hill where Arthur had first painted Alice. "Imagine that," she said in surprise. "Not much time has passed since we were here for the first time. But it feels like a lifetime." Arthur smiled. As before, he spread the blanket, and they sat down next to each other. "In my opinion," he replied, "that's what's beautiful about life. Sometimes hundreds of years pass the same way, repeating each other. And sometimes in a few weeks, you can experience enough for a whole lifetime." Alice smiled. "I remember," she said, "how we sat here, and you asked if I believed that everything that happened for a reason, was necessary. Yes, that happened. I was terribly angry with you then," Alice admitted. "I thought you were just an eccentric who didn't know life, imagining himself a romantic and a philosopher." Arthur laughed. "But every word I said is the pure truth. I really am like that. That's just a small part of you. You and your sister are truly amazing people. Now I'm sure that meeting you was fate." He turned his head and looked with curiosity. "And you don't stop surprising me, Alice. As I said, you see the good in people, even though you didn't show it at first. But I'm surprised that you're still not ready to admit that you see the good in yourself too. You know you're smart and hardworking. You can achieve incredible success in your career. But you stubbornly refuse to admit that you are a wonderful person, worthy of love and friendship, whom it's impossible not to love. It's as if you do everything to make people think you are cold and unfeeling. If my sister and I helped you even a little to see yourself as you truly are, I am very happy about that." Alice suddenly felt hot tears streaming down her face. She didn't hold them back, but just moved closer to Arthur. He hugged her, and she rested her head on his shoulder. No more words were needed. They just sat together, looking at the lake illuminated by the summer sun. Alice felt as if a huge weight she had carried since childhood had fallen from her shoulders. She didn't know what would happen next. Would she and Amy remain friends? Would there be a relationship with Arthur? But she was absolutely sure of one thing. She would never lose her true self again.